gentlemen, may I have your attention, please? The show starts in 3, 2, 1, go.
Good morning, CaneSport. It's December the 19th, 2022. I'm Gary Ferman, the publisher of CaneSport.com, joined as always by our managing editor, Matt Shodell, and tonight by Izubee Charles as we discuss the news of the day, presented today by Caneswear, your holiday shopping destination for the Canes fan, and by Life Wallet, where the time is now to take charge of your personal health. And Matt, the Life Wallet budget is soaring because Mark Fletcher is now a Miami Hurricanes commit, which means that he may now engage with Life Wallet. And, I got to think that Mark Fletcher is going to get one of the better NIL deals that has been given to a Miami recruit or a Miami player to this point, just because of what this commitment means to the program. You're talking about one of the top local players. You're talking about a running back that's an incredible physical freak that behind a epic offensive line that's being pulled together at Miami should become an absolute force in college football along the lines of some of the bigger backs that we've seen at Alabama. You're talking about the buzz, Miami climbing in the recruiting rankings, the buzz of a local superstar now coming to Miami, and there's more behind them and more kids committing all the time. You put it all together, and this is one of the bigger Miami Hurricane commits of recent memory. And I know they've got a few 5-star offensive linemen committed this year, and Mark Fletcher is not a 5-star. But in terms of the impact meter, Matt, I think this might be the biggest commit of this cycle. Your thoughts?
I mean, look, this class still is not good enough. It's actually not a good class at all. If it was opposite day, this is amazing. I don't understand. Like, my head's exploding. I don't even know what to say. This is, it's amazing if you're an American, if you're an American, if you're an American or a non-American Miami Hurricanes fan. Like, I have not seen anything like this in recruiting since 2002. It's remarkable. It's a tribute to Mario Cristobal. It's a tribute to what John Ruiz can accomplish for this program. But you hit on something very interesting, which is this. You said now that Mark Fletcher is committed, he can engage with Life Wallet. And it's interesting you say that because there's nothing in the rules that says, oh, when a player commits, he can go ahead and start negotiating deals with NIL companies. That's not in the rules, but it's not.
Well, it is in the rules,
but it's not explicitly.
It's not an
but it's not explicitly.
anymore.
Let me talk. It's not explicitly forbidden in the rules. It's the gray area. But this is what's so stupid about this system. A player can commit today to Miami, start negotiating with Life Wallet, decommit tomorrow to Florida, negotiate with Florida, recommit the next day to Miami, negotiate more with Life Wallet. This is not what this rule was meant to do. It's stupidity. The system sucks. But it's great for Miami. Like, if you're a Miami Hurricanes fan right now, the stupidity of the NCAA for once is actually helping Miami. There is no Miami rule. Miami rules. It's Miami ruling. The Miami rule is that Miami rules because nobody can stop the ridiculous stupidity of the NCAA, the gray area, and the NCAA being scared of being sued by John Ruiz and letting him do whatever the hell he wants. So between Mario Cristobal's recruiting, which we've always said has been amazing, okay, and now this stupidity.
Can we turn him off?
The morality of the NCAA, is that a word? Like, it's the perfect storm for turning Miami into what I always predicted would be a national championship competing program within 2 to 4 years. Team still won't be good next year, okay? That's okay because this is the foundation. What we saw happen yesterday, what we saw happen last week, what you click on when you hit commitment rankings today on any On3 or other network that you shouldn't be going to, okay? You will see Miami Hurricanes listed at a very high position that you're not used to seeing. You'll think, wait a minute, you'll rub your eyes. That can't be right. Miami's third in the country in recruiting and barely behind Georgia. My head's exploding. All right, I'm going back to sleep, guys.
Oh, my God. All right.
I'm done.
So, listen, Miami rules for two reasons. A, Miami from day one of NIL has had the most progressive NIL program and has had the biggest budget, the better plan, and kids are obviously attracted to it for multiple reasons. A, they're going to make money, and B, they're going to be marketed. Okay, which is a big deal in terms of other NIL deals beyond Life Wallet, beyond maybe even the Miami Collective, which is trying to pick up steam and get going. Reason number two is because before NIL even existed, Mario Cristobal was one of the best, if not the best, recruiting head coaches in the United States of America. You'll remember at Oregon, he had the top player in his class at Oregon from 9 different states. Okay, his last Oregon recruiting class. Okay, so this isn't a guy that needed NIL to come along to recruit, but it's a level playing field with NIL. So Mario can come in here with his ability to run recruiting, to run his organization, to run his program, and can find the road, find the lane to dominate in this environment with NIL. So like, this isn't like happening by accident. This is happening because Miami from day one had the best plan in the country for this and came out of the gates swinging and has just continued that momentum. And John Ruiz, who had budgeted $10 million in year one of NIL, willingly has bumped his budget up to $15 million in year two, and they're not getting outbid. Okay, like not every player in the country is not going to Miami, obviously, but they are not going to lose a kid because they got outbid by the Gator Collective or anybody else. I feel pretty certain of that. So Izubee, let's get you involved here before Matt goes on another rant. You have been out to Heritage a lot this season. You've been to many of their games. You have seen Mark Fletcher play a lot of football. Your thoughts on Mark Fletcher, the player, and how big of a commitment that this is for Miami?
Yeah, if you'd have told me a couple months ago that Miami had a top 3 class, I'd have said, is there pigs flying outside too? Like, honestly, Mario Cristobal has done an amazing job on the recruiting trail, and landing Mark Fletcher, I feel like, is one of the, if not biggest commitment of this class, next to Ruben Bain. Mark Fletcher is a very notable name in South Florida, and for good reason. One of the best, if not the best running back I watched in American Heritage this year. I feel like he doesn't go down. Against Miami Central, there was probably 2 or 3 runs where he's hit at the line of scrimmage, and then you see him make his way out of a pile some way, somehow, rumbling, stumbling for 15, 20 more yards. He does it against any and all competition. I feel like there's not one game that I watched American Heritage play and I was not saying, wow, how's Mark Fletcher doing that again? He's just that type of player. And what I love about him is his size. He is, I feel like, pretty much college ready. I mean, obviously he's got to put on some more muscle, but he's 6'2". He's got long arms. He's got good length. He's strong. He runs really physical, north and south type of guy. He's not going to beat around the bush. Hey, let me get fancy. He's just going to put his head down and run through you. So I love this commitment for Miami and Mark Fletcher now alongside Chris Johnson, who's the speedster who can, take the top off of defense. You got Mark to rumble and double down at defense as well. So awesome commitment there. Hey,
Izubee, can I ask you a question?
Yes, sir.
This is a trivia question. It's historical. I don't know if you'll know. It's from a long time ago. In early July, who predicted in the RPM or STD, I don't know, whatever it is, our recruiting prediction machine? It's either RPM or STD. It's one or the other. Gary's familiar with both equally well. That Mark Fletcher would flip to Miami. He was Ohio State commitment at the time. Who did that? Do you remember?
I'm gonna guess Matt Shodell.
That's right.
This is the guy. I hate to admit it, it's God honest truth. It's funny. Matt and I were talking, and back in June 1st, or I think it was June 1st of 2020. I think it would have been 2020. Or was it? Am I getting my years mixed up? I think it was 2020 when Matt and I were together and we first met Mark Fletcher. Okay, and we talked to him, and you could clearly see what he was going to be at that point in time. And when Mark walked away from our conversation, I remember Matt and I having a conversation, and I said to Matt, "That kid right there is a must get from Miami. And so much has happened since then. But like Matt astutely pointed out, when he was still committed to Ohio State, Matt was predicting a flip to Miami because even back then, and when we had that conversation with him, you could tell that he had an affinity for Miami. Like, this was a long time in the making. The thing that,
first of all, that's not why I predicted the flip, but you can continue.
Well, I'll let you explain why in a minute. But the thing that really threw me in this whole thing was the clear flirtation that has been taking place over the last month or so with the Florida Gators. And Florida legitimately thought they were getting Mark Fletcher. And I didn't understand that because I was with you, man. Like I felt the whole time as soon as he decommitted from Ohio State, I felt like he's coming to Miami. Why is he flirting with Florida? So go ahead, Matt. You think you got some explanations or whatever. So shoot him our way.
Well, it's not, it wasn't the time machine because it's not finished yet. It's still downstairs. So I didn't go, forward in time and see what happened. This was based on a couple of things why I put that prediction in at the time. I had talked to his father, and I knew his father was a huge Miami fan and wanted Mark to play at Miami. I knew Mark wanted to play at Miami. That was a fact. Mark always wanted to play at Miami. The reason he wasn't going to play at Miami was simple. Miami's offense was not good enough. He wanted to see the offense do really well this year, which didn't happen, by the way. But at that time, it was preseason. The offense was supposed to be better. So I was gambling that having Alex Mirabal as the offensive line coach and Mario Cristobal as an offensive line-minded head coach, I thought they were going to have a really good running game. And I figured that was a good reason why he'd flip. As it turned out, what actually happened was the offense was awful. The offensive line was awful. The running game was awful. But what did happen, and the reason why I think when I get a chance to talk more to Mark about it, that he did wind up at Miami. Yeah, you need the NIL deal, obviously. But if he had the NIL deal here and he didn't have, Samson Okunlola, Maui Goa, Javion Cohen, I am not sure he would be committed right now. And I'm not sure this wouldn't be a signing day decision for him. That alone will sell a running back on coming to Miami because he's coming in with two of the best offensive line prospects in the country, both 5 stars. Mario Cristobal and Alex Mirabal have a history of coaching up offensive linemen. It's not a big stretch to say, not a lot of great running backs on this roster. 2 5-star offensive linemen. The Alabama young starter from last year and the year before. Yeah, I could start in year 1 and I'll be in the NFL after 3 years. Yeah, why not? It made perfect sense. The only thing that would throw me for a loop is he decommitted after visiting Florida. All the scuttlebutt for most people at that time was he was going to Florida based on that because Mark wasn't talking to people. And it's funny because just as an aside, I mean, Mark's a really, really nice guy. And I've talked to thousands of recruits over the years, more than are even in the portal. That's how many recruits I've talked to, okay? A ridiculous amount. And when I talked to Mark early on in his recruitment, he would talk to me like everybody else. And you know me, I'm a real affable guy. Everybody loves me, right? Mark actually, for whatever reason, liked me. I don't know. He's like the only recruit who likes me. And as his recruitment went on and got crazier and crazier, he committed to Ohio State, right? But I would still check in with him every month. And after a while, I'd call him and he'd answer and we'd talk. And there was one conversation we had, and he'll tell you this. He said to me, listen, Matt, he said, you're the only reporter I'm talking to right now. He said, I don't like talking to reporters, but I will talk to you, And if you notice, he really didn't do any interviews. If you look at a stretch of time, about 4 months, I was like the only person he talked to. But then he wouldn't even talk to me.
Talk to Izubee.
When you went out to see him, yeah. There was one time he wouldn't talk to you, right? But then he did, yeah. What I'm saying is over the phone, he wasn't doing interviews. And it's a little different when an adult comes up to an 18-year-old and starts asking you questions. I mean, most 18-year-olds are going to talk to you, but an 18-year-old can easily not answer the phone is my point, right? So yeah, I didn't mean it like that. I meant phoners is what we call them, right? He wasn't doing phoners. But then he wasn't even doing phoners with me, which was the period of time where I was like, this is probably not a good sign, because he knows I cover Miami, of course. So I'm guessing there was a period of time during the season where he was probably like, yeah, there's no way I'm going to Miami. The team was awful. And this speaks even more to what's incredible. The team's 5-7. There is nothing in the fan base to indicate there's anything that's going to be any good for the next 50 years for this team. Fans aren't going to games. Fans are blistering comments. They're calling for coaches to be fired on message boards. And look what we got. It's like a minus plus a minus actually in real life equals a positive. -1 plus -1 equals +2. Am I wrong? Or no, it equals -2. Never mind. -1 times -1 is what I'm going for. That equals a positive. Forget the math. I thought I was good at numbers. It turns out I'm terrible at numbers. But the point is 2 negatives do equal a positive because they had a terrible season and they had a terrible offense and they still got who I consider probably one of the 2 or 3 best running backs in the entire country. So I don't know what I just said. I'm not going to watch this back. If anybody already watched this, I apologize for the last 5 minutes. It seems very confusing to me just thinking about what I may or may not have just said. So,
that's right. Your legion of fans out there, they hang on every word you say.
So let's do this instead.
Let's about your 5-minute little soliloquy here.
No, let's cut that out. Good morning, CaneSport. It's December 19th, 2022. I'm not Gary Ferman. And so, Izubee, what do you think about all the news of the day?
I love it.
Yeah.
Hey, so as part of our team coverage of this commitment, we've got a video on the website this morning where Stephen Wagner and myself break down Mark Fletcher's game. And the thing that really jumped out, the more film that we dove into, is Mark Fletcher is more than just a big guy that bullies his way down the field. He's got great feet, great sudden change of direction. He's a threat in the passing game, has a nice feel coming out of the backfield for screen passes, for example. And I even saw him blocking at times for his teammates. This is a kid that is developing into an all-around back. And Izubee, that brings me back to you. You've seen him live quite a bit, and I'd be curious to know, were you struck in watching Mark this season in that versatility that he brings to his game?
Yeah, in the state championship, you mentioned, the pass catching ability, and a few times he lined up out wide in kind of a little bubble screen formation. He caught a couple passes out the backfield, and I absolutely loved that. He had a big wheel route that he put American Heritage in position to score one of their drives as well. So that versatility, he's like you mentioned, he's not just a big bruiser that's just going to pound the rock over and over again. You can line him out wide if you obviously wanted to, or if you want to have a quick screen to dump off. He's going to catch that ball. He's going to go upfield and make plays. And with Mark, too, like you mentioned, he's not afraid to sacrifice his body downfield for his teammates. He'll put a block on a guy. He'll hold a block. He's a very unselfish team player because he did share reps this year with sophomore Byron Lewis, and he was always encouraging with him. You can see Mark cheering him on every time he did something big. So that's another thing I loved about him kind of being that big brother to Byron Lewis, and that's just a testimony to his character. Like Matt mentioned, one of the nicer kids that we've spoken to in this recruiting process. I honestly love that about Mark. He's an awesome guy on the field, and I feel like he's an even better kid off the field. So, like I said, a huge pickup for Mario Cristobal this year.
Hey, who do you compare him to, Izubee? What NFL player?
Easy one is Derrick Henry, but
Derrick Henry, yeah,
100%.
Yeah, that's the first one that comes to mind because he's just so powerful, and his arms. I feel like his wingspan has to be like 1,000,000 feet long because his arms are just, when he stands, his arms go to his shins, and I'm like, if you get real muscle on this guy, he's just going to be incredible. Like those famous Derrick Henry stiff arms, we're going to be seeing Mark tossing guys like left and right like sacks of potatoes in that Hurricanes uniform.
Some guys are just physical freaks, man. It's like, they just have a gift that, normal human beings don't have. Like, Izubee, if they gave you Mark Fletcher's physique, would have been a star recruit. I mean, it's like not everybody gets, the gifts that Mark Fletcher has. But, when he gets to college, his size is not going to be the only thing that can be his meal ticket, and that's why I love, the thing that really strikes me is his feet. He's got great feet, and he can make that initial move and get beyond the line of scrimmage and pile up those yaks. And, it's going to be fun now watching him play in college behind what clearly is going to be a really good offensive line. Now, that brings me to another one of the stories on our website today, and that is the commitment that came in earlier yesterday before Mark Fletcher stole all the oxygen in the room, and that is offensive line transfer from Alabama, Javian Cohen. And maybe Mark Fletcher comes to Miami without a Javian Cohen commit, without a Samson Okinola commit, without a Francis Maigoa commit. But I'll tell you what, man, like those didn't hurt, Matt. Like, if you're a running back, you only got so many carries in your toolbox or whatever you want to call it. You want guys in front of you that are going to make it easier for you so that you're not going to take the physical pounding. And Mario Cristobal stacking these guys unlike anything we've ever seen before.
Yeah, I mean, I already did mention that, but it's like watching Gary drive, right? If Gary sees an ambulance with its lights on go by him in traffic, he gets right behind that ambulance and just speeds right behind the ambulance the whole way. That's Mark Fletcher behind Samson Okinola. But the bigger point to me, and we didn't talk about it with Fletcher, is how he progressed. You talk to his coach at American Heritage. The head coach was his running backs coach since 8th grade before becoming the head coach. And he said, I talked to him about this, and he said that in Mark's senior year, as good as Mark was as a junior, and he had offers from everywhere as a junior, Mark got quicker and faster as a senior. But the thing that impressed him most, and what nobody is talking about, has nothing to do with Mark's physical attributes, how much quicker he may have gotten, faster he may have gotten, stronger he may have gotten. What he mentioned that impressed him the most, at least when I talked to him, is that now Mark understands how to finish a game as a running back. I don't really know what that means because I've never finished a game as a running back other than in Madden, and that was in losses pretty much all the time. But apparently it means something along the lines of Mark initially thought that just meant he had to carry the ball 35 times a game to be able to finish a game. But this year, he really started to understand how to be smart in certain situations in a game. How picking up 3 or 4 yards instead of trying to break a huge run and lose a yard, right? That helps wear down a defense. You're wearing down a defense the first 3 quarters and you just keep hammering and hammering and hammering. Mark understood this year that defense doesn't want to tackle you anymore. So don't keep using your speed when you see them getting worn out. Run them over. Keep running them over. Keep running them over. And they're going to break a tackle at some point and you're going to be gone. And this is the first year that he showed Mike Smith that, the Heritage coach. And that is, to me, is really speaks to a level of maturity you don't see from many high school running backs. And this is at a top program in the country coming out of high school. So to me, Mark Fletcher, I think will start over Trevante Citizen next year. I honestly believe that. They're very similar type of backs, but Trevante's coming off a really devastating injury. This was not just an ACL for Trevante. This was a multiple knee injury. They're not that easy to come back from. You see Saquon Barkley, it took him 2 years. This type of injury, he'll be back. Trevante will be back, but he won't be the same back next year. He will be the following year. And I think a healthy Mark Fletcher will be the guy for Miami. And yeah, he's not, like Gary said, he's not going to carry the load himself, but I could see him getting a good 70% of the share if he's as good as we think he is.
Yeah, I agree. I think he plays as a true freshman, but we're not going to be able to talk about every story on the website on this show. There have just been so many of them, but one I do definitely want to talk about, and we've had a couple of them with Bobby Washington Sr., who's obviously the father of Robbie and Bobby, and a couple really good stories over the weekend. I'm going to let Matt talk about them because he's been talking to Bobby Sr. But Matt, one of the things that I thought was just hysterical was when Bobby Sr. basically compares Mark Fletcher coming to Miami to when he committed to Miami. That I was Mark Fletcher back then, and kind of like made the parallel in the two situations, which turned out to not really be parallels because Bobby Washington never played for Miami. But talk a little bit for a minute about your conversations with Bobby Washington Sr., about those couple stories from the weekend with him and what he had to say.
Yeah, well, he reminded me of the good old days. When I first called Bobby, I said, "Hey, Bobby, it's Matt Shodell at CaneSport. It's been a minute." He goes, "Man, it's been a long time." Everyone recognizes this voice. Apparently, it's very distinct. My voice actually is so distinct. This is funny. People hate these stupid stories, most of them, but I'm telling it anyway. I don't care. So after Kyle Wright graduated, he told me this funny story when I ran into him. He says he used to go, like, I think it was Darnell Jenkins's dorm or whatever, and you have to buzz in or call him or whatever, I don't know, from downstairs. And he would hit the buzzer from downstairs to Darnell's room or whatever you had to do. And Darnell would say, "Hello?" And Kyle would go, "It's Matt Shodell from CaneSport." Darnell, can I come upstairs? I have some questions. So it reminded me of the good old days when the recruits actually had fun with me, not like when they're scared to answer their phone because Matt Shodell or Izubee Charles or Stephen Wagner or Gary Ferman are calling because we might have a scoop that we want to ask them about. It's like it's such a different era now. And talking with Bobby Sr., it was just like when we used to talk. Recruits were so different. And Bobby Sr. is a genuine person. He hasn't changed. I haven't changed. I don't think. I don't know. Maybe. But it was just like, how when you haven't seen somebody you went to high school with for 30 years, and then, well, you wouldn't know Izubee, but Gary would certainly know. And then you say they're in town and you say, let's catch up, have some dinner. And you just start talking like you've known them for that entire 30 years, even if you haven't talked in 30 years. It's like that it was like that with Bobby Sr. So it was really nice chatting with him. And he told me some stuff that I didn't print. For instance, I was talking to Gary about this earlier yesterday. So when I was talking about, Mark Fletcher, and he's like, yeah, I was talking to Mark Fletcher, and we printed some of the quotes. And I said to him, I said, so you think Mark's coming? And he gave me the quote about, yeah, I do think he's coming. And, I said, did you ask him if he's coming? And he says to me, Mark asked me to keep that secret. So, we'll find out, which obviously means Mark, which we all knew was committing, which we did not print because obviously we're not here to ruin anyone's announcement. We'd already heard from other people that he had, told Miami he was coming, but it was just a matter of announcing it. But I thought that was funny too. And the other story, I don't want to belabor everything, but the other story we wrote, which you could just read it, guys, I don't want to belabor it. An amazing story that we wrote on Saturday about how, and this is crazy. When I wrote it, I equated it to the Curse of the Bambino, which as Gary knows is a curse from the 1400s with King Arthur's sword. Gary, no, it's Babe Ruth's curse, and Gary actually went to some of Babe Ruth's games, so that's why he knows what the Curse of the Bambino is.
Izubee's sitting there thinking, who's Babe Ruth?
Yeah, probably. George Herman Ruth is how Gary refers to him. Because
Babe Ruth was a baseball player, Izubee, who played about 80 years before you were born. So
Gary refers to him as Mr. George Herman because he went to his games. So anyway, it was sort of equated to the Curse of the Bambino by Bobby Sr., the fact that he signed with Miami. Bobby Washington Sr. signed with Miami in 2004. Did not get into school because the school, he says, questioned his test scores. I can barely remember yesterday. I don't remember what happened. He says Donna Shalala wouldn't let him in. Wound up at NC State, but he signed with Miami. The day he signed with Miami in 2004 was the same day that Bobby and Robbie were born that afternoon. He didn't know when he signed they were going to be born. He signed, he was about to have a big party, and then he had to rush to the hospital. He says, ever since Donna Shalala wouldn't let him into school, the Miami Hurricanes program has been terrible. It's a curse. He says, now that his sons are coming and they signed and they're going to be able to enroll, the curse will be broken. And the Miami Hurricanes will be
now
back.
there's Washington's in the building.
They'll be back. That's what he said. So you guys can all read that story if you didn't. It's an incredible story.
Make sure you guys read that story. It is one of the more unbelievable stories. It's just a shame because we've been putting so much content on the website that these stories
got lost. And look, I mean, the parts I did not make up are all true. So you guys really should read it.
Yeah, if you didn't read that story, make sure.
He didn't even understand my joke. He doesn't even listen to me.
No, I'm just saying if people did not read that story, we actually may need to rebump it up a little bit because it is a great story. It is so funny. And Bobby Sr. says, now that the Washingtons are back in the building, the curse of Donna Shalala, who would not let him into school because she accused him of faking his ACT score or whatever the heck it was.
He's so bitter. He just calls her that lady. He says that lady wouldn't let me in. I'm like,
he had to go play at NC State. I mean,
I'm like, what lady? I thought it was some admissions director. I'm like, the admissions director? It's like, no, the president. I'm like, Donna Shalala? He's like, yeah, her. He's so upset still. He's still upset. He should have had a career. He should have lived out his dream. And Donna Shalala crushed Bobby Washington Sr.'s dream, crushed the hopes of Miami Hurricanes fans for 20 years because of the curse. And now the curse is finally lifted.
I give him a lot of credit because obviously he would be bitter and he clearly still remembers it and whatever. And at the beginning of recruiting, it didn't look like
he was crying during the visit when he saw Ishmael.
You've ranted for 10 minutes and on two different occasions on the show. True. I'm trying to say one thing, which is that when recruiting started, it didn't look like Robbie and Bobby were coming to Miami. And Mario got the job and started recruiting them hard. And to Bobby Sr.'s credit, he didn't stand in the way of them becoming Miami Hurricanes, and they have been great members of this signing class of Izubee. As you know, you've gotten to know them and get relatively close to them as well. And I think you would agree that they've been like really strong commits in this recruiting class.
Yeah, no, those two guys have gave me, the same impression as Ray Ray. They're just recruiting their tails off whenever and anytime they can. Even at games when they're playing against guys, they're saying, "Come to Miami." Robbie's really vocal on social media. Come to Miami. We're starting this trend. We're going to bring Miami back up top. Bobby's just he's a little bit more quiet than Robbie, but he's really a funny guy too. Always saying we're coming to Miami, making the crib great again. Just two very energetic guys that I love their passion. I love what they believe in, and they just really want to come back to Miami and kind of live out the dream that their father had, and just make him really proud. So I love that story. That's awesome that they're doing that.
Izubee, I want to ask you about another one. Yesterday you had the opportunity to interview Emory Williams after his unofficial visit to Miami this weekend. And one of the most amazing things, and Matt and I were talking about this yesterday as well, that we can't remember like guys in a signing class during a recruiting weekend getting up at 7:00 in the morning to go train with each other and start throwing balls and getting their timing down. Like spring practice doesn't start until middle of March, man. I mean, it's like they're out there on a field throwing routes to each other with Jackson Carver and I think a few of the other guys. And you had a chance to talk to Emory a little bit about that and just the other elements of his weekend in Miami. And remember, he's driving from the Florida Panhandle to come down here and be part of this. This is like the fourth time Emory's done this. And, Emory's a kid that could have run away when Jaden Rashada initially committed to Miami, and people were ranking Jaden Rashada higher than Emory. And Emory never wavered, at least not publicly, about being a Miami Hurricane. He comes out of this smelling like a rose because Jaden Rashada flamed out. He's up there now dealing with the train wreck up in Gainesville, after that bowl game the other day, and their recruiting is falling apart.
Who shouldn't have been in a bowl game, Ferman? I told you.
It. No, you did. You were right about that too, Matt. You're getting better in your. It's taken 25 freaking years of CaneSport to get that brain of yours working.
I got two things right. I got two things right. I'm 180.
You're right. I think Miami has benefited by not having to be in a bowl game the last few weeks and being able to focus 100% on recruiting. And Gator fans now are whining, "Oh, geez, we never should have taken that bowl game." Listen, Gator fans, I know you're probably watching this show too. You didn't lose these recruits because you played in a bowl game. You lost these recruits because Miami it has a better organization right now. It's better organized in recruiting, better organized in NIL, and they got the better head coach and the better head coach recruiter. Okay, that's the facts. Okay, that's why you're losing all the recruits, not because you played in the bowl game, but playing in the bowl game and looking like garbage the way you guys did. No, that did not help anything at all. All right, so we've covered that stuff. Other things that we've got on the website. We talked to Samson Okinola, who made a surprise visit down this weekend after his own commitment this week, and came down on his own dime to be part of this recruiting weekend with all of his buddies. And the other thing that really struck us this weekend was how all of the kids that have already taken officials that are part of the class, almost the entire class, came in this weekend on unofficial visits just to be part of the recruiting weekend to help recruit these couple of kids. And there's more potentially coming. You've got the Brown brothers that are still yet to announce. You've got Conrad Hussey, who's still yet to announce. These are kids that Miami's working really, really hard, and this class could really start to grow more by signing day. So we took the opportunity this morning to take a historic perspective on what clearly is going to be a top 5 class from Miami and talk about how it ranks against some of the best classes that we've seen in Hurricane history. And Matt, when this is done, and of course these guys got to play, but on paper, this could end up being the best Miami recruiting class in the program's history.
To me, it's a chocolate souffle, right? It's rich in history. It's got, you drop something on the top of it and it still stays strong. It's got a strong foundation. You can't collapse it. It's built on air. There's nothing that can defeat air. I mean, what defeats air? Nothing can beat air. So now this recruiting class is really just shockingly good to me, because you guys know me. I always start with low expectations, probably rightfully so. And the reason being, you can be pleasantly surprised, but I'm not just pleasantly surprised by what we've seen. I'm shockingly surprised, because what I did know even a few weeks ago was there was going to be some craziness. And we told you guys this. We said that it's going to be crazy the last week or two of recruiting as programs come along and make different NIL offers, and kids try to figure out what they're doing and this and that. And it just appears like all the Miami targets, other programs are fizzling when it comes to trying to steal them away. Whereas for Miami, everything's falling into place perfectly. Miami fans should be celebrating this morning, whether you're watching at 5 a.m. or 6 a.m. Or whatever. I mean, no matter what time of day it is today, you should be celebrating, because there's not a lot that we've had to celebrate for Miami in the last 20 years. So when you get a day like this, enjoy it. Tell your Gator fans, hello, good morning. It's so wonderful to see you today.
Can you? Oh my God, those guys, they got to be beside themselves. All right, we've been in team no sleep mode here with so much going on. But Izubee, we did take the time this weekend to go out to the South Florida Express tryouts to start looking at the young kids that are going to be part of the future. And they're going to be adding a lot of guys to the team. They're, guys were spread around. But all in all, your impressions of the talent that you saw out there as South Florida Express, the number one 7-on-7 team in the country last year, starts putting together the group that it will use to try to defend that throne in this season.
Yeah, so the South Florida Express team is really just retooling this year. I mean, they lost a ton of talent from the 2023 class with guys like Brandon Ennis, Mark Fletcher, Hakeem Williams, but the drop-off, there is no drop-off. They're bringing in that next group of guys, the Chaminade 2024 guys, Jeremiah Smith, JoJo Trader. They even had two guys out from California flying from Mater Dei and St. Bosco. So the South Florida Express, it may be called the South Florida Express, but they're recruiting nationally and bringing some of the best talent to South Florida to play for that 7-on-7 team. And they have a lot of young and upcoming guys too. They have Chance Robinson from St. Thomas Aquinas that they think is going to step up really big for them this year. And they're coached by a former Hurricane linebacker, Rod Mack. So expect a lot of good things from South Florida Express. And I think they'll repeat his national championships this year. Just a really good program over there.
And one of the stories we had over the weekend was on 2025 wide receiver Lucas Love. He's from Lucas, Texas, and his name is Dalen McCutcheon. And he looked pretty good out there, Izubee. I mean, he's a 2025 kid. It's early, but he leaves the Express tryouts, goes down to Miami for an unofficial visit, gets offered while he's in Miami. So Dalen, I would say, had a pretty productive weekend in South Florida.
Yeah, he was one of the guys when they start doing the one-on-ones and routes. I was like, okay, this kid definitely has kind of separated himself from the rest of the group. And then I kind of looked into him a little bit more. Really productive season for a sophomore talent at a really big school in Texas. Lovejoy had, I think, 3 or 4 Division I wide receivers playing alongside him. So his numbers might, have not popped off, but he was a really productive young man. And on the field, too, you can see really composed, great route runner, strong hands. And something interesting after I spoke with his father, a bunch of ties to the University of Miami. He had 2 cousins play basketball and soccer at Miami. His dad was born and raised in Hallandale, huge Hurricane fan. His Pop Warner team was interesting, growing up in Texas with a Hurricane. So he has pictures of him throwing up the U with the Canes jersey on. So hopefully that's a sign of good things to come for that 2025 young man.
All right, and not to be forgotten, the Canes basketball team had a 91-76 victory over St. Francis this weekend. They are now 11-1, and we are going to find out if they really are the real deal Tuesday night at the Watsco Center, because Virginia comes to town, and I know they lost to Houston or whatever, and they were number 2 in the country, and they'll probably drop in the polls that come out today. Maybe they'll drop to number 5 because Houston was number 5. But this is Miami's first signature game of the season, really. This game against Virginia Tuesday night. So if you live locally, get yourself out. Tip-off will be at 8:30 at the Watsco Center, and enjoy some really solid ACC hoops. It's going to be a really big game for the Hurricanes. All right, a couple notes. Tonight at 8 p.m., we will have our annual CaneSport.com recruiting special. It'll be broadcast on our YouTube channel and obviously linked off of CaneSport.com. We welcome everybody to join us for that at 8 o'clock tonight. We will be reviewing the recruiting class, talking a little bit about it, sharing our opinions, and we also will be taking questions from you guys, the fans, as well, that you might have about recruiting, how the class might be finishing, so forth and so on. So that's at 8 o'clock tonight. Make sure you join us for our CaneSport.com recruiting special. If you like this show, like what we put on our YouTube channel, hit your subscribe button, hit your like button. It helps us with the algorithms at YouTube. And if you are not yet a subscriber to CaneSport.com, please hustle on over to the website. Take advantage of our introductory special for just $10. That will cover you until the start of the 2023 football season. So that's going to do it for this morning. Thank you so much for starting out your day with Izubee and myself, and we really appreciate it. So for Izubee Charles, I'm Gary Ferman. We'll see you guys tomorrow, everybody.